So in this video, we're going to talk about column starter cages. Where we left off previously, we had the basis. All I did is I added the columns for the columns for those pad footings. I have left the reinforcement in as we've had it before for the basis. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the starter cages for these columns. And I would like to potentially work through three alternatives. One being a custom component, the second being rebar sets, and the third just to use rebar groups. So we can see, and obviously single bars in combination of the rebar groups, just to see what the workflow for the three types are. And there's obviously a lot of positives and negatives to both, to all of these methods. And I suppose your particular situation will determine which one works better for you. It doesn't necessarily mean because the one is more long-winded than the other one, you might be in a situation where you don't have a choice. You have to use that method or something like that. Just sort of look at your situation, pick the best method for your situation, and use that method. So the first thing I'm going to do is, at the moment we're still showing the assembly number, and I just let Tekla number the columns, you know, normal Tekla standards and numbering settings. But what I'm going to do is, previously, if I can just drag this PDF in here for a minute again, previously we sort of referred to the different section types for the column. So we've got an R1, R2, R3, which is rectangular 1, 2, and 3 type. And if we go up to the shape, we can see a rectangular shape type 1. The layout of it is as such. Now, bear in mind, this is for the column section and not for the starter section. For the starter section, all is required is actually the L bar starter that goes up and two link bars within the foundation just to keep the starters in position, so when they drop the column cage on, these don't move around and is dimensioned or set out correctly. So what we are going to be doing is actually working with this dotted line bit here. And just to sort of look at the column schedule again, so for the starters, which is these three L's at the bottom here, they're basically for the big column, the type R1, they require 42 N28s and N12s at 250. For the other two, it's basically N24s and N20 respectively, 12 in the one, 10 in the other one. And the way they've arranged it, if we look at this, they've basically got 20 bars running along this side, 20 along that side, which gives us 40, and then they've got one there and one there, which makes up the 42. In this one, they've got 5 this side, 5 this side, which makes up 10, and then they've got 1 in the middle on each side. That gives you your 12. And on this one, they've basically got 6 aside, which is 12 as well. So what we're going to do is we'll just flick back. I'm not religiously going to follow that table. The point here is to work with the detailing methods, and hopefully we can uh, discuss all three of the methods and get through it. I'm trying to keep these videos as short as possible, but we'll just see how we go. So, okay, first of all, I'm going to do this big column first. So what I'm going to do is first, just to identify where they are, I am going to use a little trick where I'm going to say click on the three types, those three columns. I know they're all the same, and then I'm going to scroll down to and say user defined attributes. And in here, I'm just going to pick the user field one because it's available, and I'm going to type in R1 there, and I say modify OK. And then what I'm going to do is the next size up is this 500 column, which is this one here. And I'm going to again go to the user defined attributes, and in here I'm going to say this is a type 2, R2, modify OK. And then lastly, these little skinny columns, which is 300 width. You can either pick this button, user defined attributes on here, or you can right click and say, um, that's interesting. I thought there was a user defined. No, there is. Oh, let me just see if we pick multiple of them and then right click, you don't have it. Okay, so when you have a single click in your right click, you can access the user defined attributes that way, or otherwise if you do a multiple pick, it's better just to use the property pane. Click on that and set them all at the same time. So we go user field 1 and we make that R3 and we say modify. Okay, so what we need to do now is, now that they're all in, we just need to change the settings in the display. So if I double click the window, we can go to the display, and under advanced we can click on the assembly position. We can say remove that. We can click on the user defined attributes, add. It will ask us which one to add, so we can just type in here in capitals user underscore field underscore 1, and okay, and then when we modify, that should change it, and it does. And we say okay, okay. So now we can identify our different column types. So let's just get to the R1 to start out with. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to start with the um, uh, custom components. So if you click on custom components, you'll be faced with a sort of an hierarchy if you're in the Australasian environment. A quick way to get to the correct components, but start typing in footings, as I've done there, FOO. And then yeah, we've got starter bars for footing. So if we click on that one, well, there's two ways. You can click on it and it's ready to go, or otherwise what you can do is if you double click on it, it will pop up a properties window. So if we just load the standards and we say apply OK, and we then click on the footing, because that's where we want to add the cage. If we click on the footing, it will think a bit, and then it will give you sort of a default setting of what they would look like, and it might look something like this. So what we can do now is we can double click on the component and start tweaking it. So the first thing we're going to do is these lengths at the bottom here is very long, because they are, the setting here is for cover and the length is whatever it is. But what we're going to do is we're going to change it to this one and force this setting to be, say for instance, 500. And if I say modify, that sort of fixes that up, so that looks a lot better. The next thing I'm going to do is just to try and sort out the different sides. So sometimes with the sides, you've got to sort of figure out which side goes where in terms of orientation. So if we look at this little diagram, on this side here, I'm just going to change that to 1 and see what happens in the picture. If I say modify, and that is exactly what I want, because the wall is got a length in that way. And if I click on this one and say that is 18, because it's already got its corner bars, as I modify, you can see it's got the 18 bars plus the 2 on the corners, which gives you 20 on that side, that gives you 40, and then the 2 in the middle, that gives you 42. So we've got the number of bars is now correct. Now what we need to do is we've got to go over to the um, bottom cover, and in the bottom cover you can see the offset there. I think what we need to do is uh, type in 130, I think is what I've measured, so you can see it's sort of sitting nicely on top of those bars. But again, I mean, you'd probably be closer to 120 if I look at that. If I say 120 modify, oh, it's too much. So 125 is probably the correct value. Yep. So if you look at 125, you can see that those are sitting nicely on it now. Okay, so moving on, what we can do is if we just go back to the picture again, we can just address the corner bars. We do want the grade for the corner bars is a 28, and it's a main bar. And for the side bars, we also have 28s. And for the stirrups, the engineer called for 12s, but as a tie. And if we now say modify, that fixes up the diameters and stuff. So now what we need to do is to go to, we've dealt with the bottom, the location of the bars, and in here we can position the starter cage to the base. So in that direction, the cage is 3/8 long, and in this direction, it's 450. And if I say modify, you can see immediately we've got that. And from that, I can clearly see that I've got my cages swapped around the wrong way. So if we go back to our pictures and in here, we type in, I thought I had that correct, 100, modify. Okay, so that's obviously not right. So if we sorry, I got that in the wrong spot. If we take this and make this 1, and we take this and we make this 18, modify, that fixes it up. That looks a lot better. Okay, now that we've got that, what we can do now is go over to location again. So this is the size of our concrete. Our offset is 0, 0, so that's in the middle, so that will automatically be correct. We do have options here where we can use like double L's, but I'm happy to use just a normal stirrup. We also have an option to use a round column. So we'll pick that. And under parameters, you have now options to prefix your, say, your sidebars can, we can use that view for a vertical bar, the corner bars are verticals, and for the stirrups, we can prefix them with, say, for instance, L in K or LK for link. And then just as a matter of completeness, let's change this to 2 and 3. And if we then modify, we can see that the ligatures are now green. Let me just take the ligatures here are now green and the main bars are now red, which is the 2 and the 3 that I was referring to. Okay, so now that we've done that, all we need to do really is to have a look at the starter cage of these ligatures in terms of position. So if we go to, let me just have a look at the ligate, this little drawing here, we can say the number of ligatures we want is 2 because that's what the sketch indicated. If we say modify, you can see there's 2 there. And then we can push them down, say for instance 200 from the top. Modify, that pushes it down, and we can say give us a spacing of 400 just to space them apart. So you can see just like that, we now have a cage that gives us a bar on the bottom. We can actually make this a bit more. We can make that, say for instance 600, modify, gives us a bar at the bottom, and maybe we can push it 300 down, modify. So that sort of gives us a nice tie in the base to tie these bars together. And that sort of makes up the first type, the component. Now, just like before, now that we've got that done, what we can do now is we can go over to edit, we can go over to the batch editor, and for the source assembly we can select this base. It will pick up the base, but it will also pick up the 2 similar bases automatically. And now that we've got them automatically picked up, all we have to do is to say copy the components across, and it will populate those 2 starters with exactly the same information, which then finalizes those big columns for us. All right, so I think the next thing we're going to do, if we look at the top here, we will address this little column here, which is the fatter one. It's the 500, it's the same as this one. So maybe we'll use this one just to have a better sort of visual. So if I take that, first of all, I just want to make sure that I do have another view here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that view. So I've only got this one view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a section. Now I've got a shortcut C2, but you could also use view, and then under your new views, you can pick using 2 points. I've got a shortcut that I made up, which is C2, just for me, cut by 2 points. And if I then click there and there, you can see I can very easily then create a section along there. Now the other thing that I want to do is, if I go back to my plan, I want to pick this 2 concrete elements, and I want to right click and say fit work area in all views, so I don't see all the other bases. So if I flick over, you can see I can only see those 2. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to start, and I think in this exercise what we'll do is we'll deal with the single bars and bar groups first. So I think, let me see. Okay, let's go into plan. And what we'll do is we'll go over to rebar, and we'll go over to bar group and pick a bar group. And what it's saying here is pick the part to reinforce. But first, before I do that, I want to just click on our property pane again and make sure that, for one, is I've loaded all my defaults, just in case I've made some silly settings, which I have. And then make sure that I'm picking the 12 tie. normal spacing. This is a ligature, so we do want to put a hook on it, which is 135 degrees both ends. And then let's just leave the cover arrangements. We'll fix that now. For distribution, I am going to say that we want the number of bars to be 2. And I think that is it for now. So what we can do now is we can say we want to add this reinforcement to the base, but for the shape, we want to use the column. So I'm going to click on the column, outline, then back to where we started, and middle mouse to accept the shape. And now it's asking me for the range 2 points. So what I'll do is I'll flick over to our other shape, and I'll click from that point down to this point. And now, as you can see, Tekla has added that ligature for us, and you can see from the on and from plane it's using a 25 millimeters, which is not much there. So what we'll do is if we so we started at the top, so from the top we can push it down, say for instance 200 millimeters again, and at the bottom we can say come up 250 millimeters. If we then say modify, you can see that it's now pushed those ligatures 200 from the top, 250 from the bottom. We might need a bit more at the bottom because we still need to get the hooks for the starter bars in, so I'm going to make that 350. And now it's in the way of the other one, so let's just go to 300 just to put it below. Yep, that's it. So if you look at this in space, you can see that those two ligatures are sitting there sort of in the middle of space. And if we look at it from the top, you can see it's quite nicely 25 millimeters within the column there. So that takes care of the ligatures. So now in terms of the uh, starter bars, we'll do with the one on the edge first, and that will be a single bar. So if we click single bar, and again I'll just load my standards in case I've messed up stuff, and then I'll pick, and I think on this one they want to work with 24s. We'll use a different color, and there's no hooks, and we'll just leave this again so we can alter this once we've got it in. I want to reinforce this, and then what I'm going to do is I am going to say that I'm just going to start anywhere along this line, go down to the bottom, and then return anywhere there and say okay. Now what it's done is it's given us if I go to the plan, it's given us a bar that sort of sits in um, the wrong sort of location. Now the first thing I'm going to adjust is I'm going to get that on the center, and that will be your from plane settings. So if I make that 0, enter, it pushes the bar onto the center. And then if you look at the actual placement of the cover, there's 2 parts to it. So if you can remember, I placed this leg first, so that leg is leg 1, and this leg was placed secondly, so that's leg 2. So in terms of the on-plane settings, leg 1 needs to be the 25 shows it on the outside of the column, so we need to negative this to put it on the other side. So we need 25 to get to the stirrup, and then we need the stirrup of 12, so that will give us 37. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that minus 40 to clear the inner leg, and then a space, and for the bottom I'm going to use 130 again to pull it up from the bottom. So as soon as I do that and I say okay, you see that Tekla that draws this bar on the inside, but it looks like I miscalculated the cover at the bottom. So if we change that to, let's try 110. Yep, that's the correct one. 110 then sort of leaves it there. But what you could do also is, you can drop it a bit more so that these bars sit on the red bars, and on the other side they sit on the green bars. So it's just a matter of manipulating this cover. I'll just leave it at that for now to show you the difference between single bars and groups and rebar sets, because with rebar sets there's an intelligent way to deal with that. So now that we've got that, what we can do is go back to our plan, make sure Control P so we see it dead from the top, and we can click on this bar. Oh, before we do that, we still need to just make sure that our bar lengths have sensible length. So what I'm going to do is for this vertical length, which is our leg 1, this is the start leg, I'm going to change the cover thickness to a leg length, and I'm going to make the leg length 2 meters. That will give us 2 meters from the bottom to the top. And for the foot, I'm going to make it a 500 foot, and again I'm going to convert this from cover to length and say modify. So now we know that this bar is the right size as well. So if I click on the bar, right click, and I inquire that bar, we can see that we have an A leg of 500 and a B leg of 2 meters. So that's the way you can control actual leg lengths. So that takes care of that. Now if I go to control P again to look at it straight from the top, what we can do is click on the bar, right click, copy special, mirror. We want to mirror about the center point here, and our direction is vertical. And if I then say copy, it will replicate that bar on the other side, which pretty much takes care of, excuse me, takes care of the bar on the other side for us. Now, similarly, we can go to the elevation, just kill it. And then what I'll do is C2, my shortcut again for view with 2 points, create a view along this side. So we can look at it from this side. And then also what I'll do is I'll just flick back to the plan, make sure that we pick the 2 concrete parts, right click and say fit work in all views. That should fix up our elevation view, and it does. So you can see we've got our 2 leakages there and our 2 starter bars there, and we're going to do the same on this, except this time we're going to use a bar group. So we're going to go bar group, and then we've got our default settings loaded. I will then go and pick the N24 main bar. I will make them green as well, and then what I'll do is there is no hook on these, and then also for the setting, I'll keep the settings as we have them here. Actually, no, I'll just reset them. And then the number of bars, this creation method, we need 6 bars in here, so we can end up with 14 bars at the end. 6 either side and 2 in the middle, that's 14 bars. So what I'll do is I'll just leave a 6 there, and I am going to add this bar to the footing. Again, I'm going to start on the top here somewhere, work my way down to the bottom and then across. And I'm going to middle mouse to accept that, and then flip back to the plan, and then say this will be arranged from this side of the column to that side of the column. And again, as before, you can see we've got the situation where we've got our cover on the wrong side. So if I click on that, we can just quickly go to this and say we want -40, and I think we had 110 before. That sort of takes care of that. And then for the on plane and from plane, this is, and I'll just flick over to the other view and control P. The from plane setting is this distance off the end there, so it's 25 at the moment. So if we make that 50, let's just see, okay, that works out. 50 sort of brings these bars nicely in, so you can see the 6 of them then there spaced. And now lastly, the only thing we need to sort out is actually, again, this the leg length. So we'll flick both these to leg. The start leg will make 2000, and the foot at the bottom will make 500. And if we modify that, we now have a bar that's exactly the same as that bar there, so you can see it there. And just like before, if we then go Control P, click on this group, and we say copy mirror. Now I've got a shortcut for that as well, and we mirror along the horizontal line again, and we say copy. We have those replicated on the other side. Now if we look at this gauge, it's pretty much complete. And just to check if all the reinforcements is belongs to the footing, if I hover over the footing holding the Alt key and just click on the footing, it will light up everything that belongs to it, so you can see all the reinforcements actually included in the footing, and that pretty much completes that. Now if we just go and fit all work, you'll see that the other 2 has not been populated yet. So again, we'll go over to edit, batch editor, select our source, and that is our source. It picks up the other 2 again automatically, and we just say copy, close. And as you can see, I'll just do a redraw. We now have our second type completed by using single bars and rebar groups. So we've got components done, rebar groups and single bars. Now for the last one, what I'm going to do is I'll use the rebar sets to to do this one as a starter cage, and that should pretty much give you 3 ways to deal with starter bars in columns. So again, just like before, I'll flick over to the elevation view and delete it or kill it. And then on this one, what I'm going to do is this one does not have any bars in the middle yet. It's only got the side bars, and it's got the stirrup. So what I'm going to do is I will do a section along this line here, and then you can see where that is. And then what we can do is flick over to that, pick this concrete and that concrete, right click, fit work area to selected parts in all views. So it basically gives you your workspace to only include that column. You see the others are not shown. And if we go to the other view now, it's the same. Yeah, Control P will give us the elevation. So the first thing is we're gonna put in the starter cage. And I think just to make things a bit simple, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the concrete, right click, and say holding shift and say show only selected, because I don't want to show the reinforcement for that base, so we're only left with concrete. And I'm definitely going to do the same on this view. Select the two concrete, right click, holding the shift key, show only selected. That shows only the concrete. Flip back to the plan, and then what we can do is we can go to rebar, we can go to more, and we can say point input. And if we do the point input, we can pick the normal input. And then in here, you can see it still remembers our previous settings. So I'll just load my standards again. That will give us 12 ligages. We'll keep them red. In terms of the offset start, I won't put anything in there. Distribution, again, we want number. I only want 2 bars, or 2 ligages rather. And we'll just ignore the other settings for now. So what I'm going to do in here is I've got to show this shape now. In the rebar sets, you don't click on the part to add it to. You pick a shape, and Tekla determines where that part belongs to automatically. So what we'll do is we'll pick the shape of the bar. Now also with rebar sets, as you pick this polygon, it makes a cyan line, and if you pick something that is not correct, it will show a red line. But at the moment I'm in plan, so anything will work. So if I close it and I middle mouse, it will now ask for the start position of the actual range. So if I flick over to this, we can then pick a point there and a point there, and it will give you um, like a red assembly. Now what it probably means is that there's a setting that's not good. So if we click on that, you can see the rebar is in there somewhere. Yeah, we've got a setting that doesn't work. So what I'll do is, first of all, I'll try and move these bars down, and also, yeah, I'll move them down to see if I can get that to work, and that did work. So Tekla did not like the fact that this was on 0, because it couldn't associate this with a proper concrete outline, because it's got an outline, but it's in the middle of a concrete shape. And to better explain that, I'll go to visible, leg visibility, and then click on the bar. So you can see from that leg visibility, all those rebar legs are actually not associated with any concrete faces. So that is why we got that error. The second thing is not an error, it's just Tekla's telling you that I'm struggling to make an association here. The other thing that you'll notice is it didn't actually apply cover, because there's no concrete surface. These rebar surfaces are really intended to be on a concrete face, but you can work around it the way that I did. Yeah. Now to fix that up, what I'm going to do is I'll click on the face. Now as soon as you click on the face, you've got to look at your property pane. It will tell you you're working with a leg face, and in here what we can do is we can say add an additional offset of 25 millimeters, and you'll see it'll actually add the cover for you. And I think, let me just click on this 25. Let me just flip this around, put it on the other side, click on this one. Let me just get a few done and see what it does. Okay, so if you click on this and it's doing it in the wrong way, it means our rotation could be incorrect. So what I'll do is I'll just delete that and reinsert it quickly again. So if we go back to more lines, we'll pick that. Everything else is okay, and we'll go the opposite direction this time. and accept that, and then hover over to our elevation just to get a line. And now if we go to our view, we click on the view and we select the 25, you can now see now the cover is on the correct side. You can flip it, but sometimes the flip does not work if it can't associate with a concrete face. So in this case, what I did is I just swapped the order of the entering the bar. So if I pick all the faces quickly and I just add, yep, look, this one as well, I just add the 25 millimeters. The cover has been applied, so you can see if we look at from the top, you can see this cover all the way around. And now what we need to do is just tell this bar that we have an end condition. So if we click on the bar, and maybe what I'll do is I'll just switch off the leg faces quickly. If I click on the bar, I can then say add an end modifier and make sure defaults are loaded again. So for the end modifier, what we can do is make sure that we have a 135 degrees, and I think that's it. So what we can do is, because we don't have an edge to select, and I'll just sort of pick this, because we don't have an edge to select, we can select the edge of the bar, but what sometimes happens is it sort of ends up in the wrong space and you've got to put in two of them. So the way I get around it is I switch back to our pick mode for point pick. I'll pick here, and then what I'll do is I'll flick over to our thing again. I'll drag it down to the bottom. Now this, and then middle mouse. Now this will have a slight slope to it if you look at it, because it's now set to that. So all we need to do here is to move this to there. And the way we can deal with that is we can switch off the guideline so we don't see that. And then what we can do is we can go to alternate and select that node, go to control, flip to our plan, and then say move linear. We can move this point back to that point. Make sure that we're only moving in the X directions, and if we then say move, that line is now vertical, and you can see it's now applied the hook on both ends, because it's now detecting both ends under one modifier. So that takes care of the ligature. So next what we'll do is we'll add the starter bar. So what I'll do is I'll go to our plan view for this, and in here we do have several options. Again, we can just use the point tool, and then select our, I think they wanted 20 in this one. We'll pick a different color, and what I'm going to do is I'll just zero out or delete the end and offset. Yeah, we want a number, and the number is going to be 6 bars. And I think that's it for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the shape there somewhere. I'm going to end it at the bottom, and I'm going to end it there and just say middle mouse button, and then it's going to ask for the range, and I can just pick this end up to this end, and that will give us our bars. Now, the big difference here between rebar sets and rebar groups is that the rebar set is automatically picked up that there's already a rebar set existing, so it's got the cover on the inside for us, right? The other thing too is if we just do a redraw all, it's also picked up that there's reinforcement at the bottom, and it's already put it on the third level for us. So we don't have to worry about that either. The only thing that we need to do is to make sure that our bar lengths are the same length. So if we switch on guidelines and faces, there's two ways to do it. The one is you can actually manipulate the face and make it the length of the bar. The other way to do it is to actually use the end modifier. So if we click on that bar, and I'll switch off the leg faces for this exercise, click on the bar, go to the end modifier, just load our standards again in case we've got funny tweaks. And then what I'll do is this time I'll say that the hook I want is no hook. But what I want to do is I want to add a adjustment type, a length adjustment type of leg length, and the leg length I'm looking at is 2 meters. And then what I can do is make sure that I'm in a bar mode, hover over this bar, just click there somewhere, and then what happens is Tekla will then adjust this leg. So from the bottom to the top, it will be 2 meters. Now what we need to do is the same at the bottom. So for this, I'm just going to isolate this bar quickly, show only select it, so we can actually pick it. So if I pick it, end condition, instead of 2 meters, we make this 500 like before, and we'll hover over this side, and then that leg is also now 500. So if we click on this bar and we say inquire, you can see we have a 500 and a 200 leg perfectly done without having to stuff around with the leg faces. And also we are perfectly in the inside of that ligature. Um, what we can do now is if we go to plan, we can grab these starter bars. Again, we can say right click, copy special mirror, and we want to mirror about that line. And we can say copy, and it copies the starter bars across to that side. And that basically concludes the starter bar cage for the rebar set. So if we do a redraw all, we get the whole thing. And if we say the entire work, we see all of them. So the only thing that's left to be done right now is to go back to our edit, go back to our batch editor. On the source assembly, we pick this base as a source. Oh, I must have not picked it. Okay, if I pick it, it picks it. It automatically finds the other two. As you can see there, and all we have to do is to say copy the changes across. And then once that is done, and that is not copied it. Okay, let me just try this again. I think I've got a bit of finger trouble here. So for the, so it has picked that one up, and if we say copy, oh, okay. The reason why it's not copying it is this is a very good example of that you always need to check where the bars are associated to. So if I hold in my alternate key and I hover over and I click, you can clearly see there that these bars did not belong to the pad because Tekla sort of does this calculation. If you go to concrete, calculate pores, and you go to rebar and you say more and you say regenerate, all rebar sets will be regenerated. Yes, if you then alternate hover over the, I wonder why my highlighter seems to be a bit sporadic. So if I click on the alternate, you can see it's not associated. So what we need to do is click on this bar, click on that bar, and then also click on the ligature just to make sure, right click, and we say attach to a part, and then attach to this part. So now what we can do is if we go more, regenerate, yes. If we now hold in our alternate key and click on our base, you can see that that reinforcement is now associated with the base. So now if we go to our editor and we go to our batch editor, again we pick our source to be this. It picks up the other two and we can say copy it across. And now you can see that it's actually added the assembly for us perfectly there. And that I think concludes this video. So hope you enjoyed it and looking forward to the next video. Thank you very much.